The harsh sound of tearing fabric echoed across the concrete floor as the regional director grabbed Samantha's shoulder, ripping her collar in front of 50 silent warehouse workers. Maybe if you didn't buy your clothes from a discount bin, they wouldn't fall apart, he mocked completely, unaware that the quiet new data clerk standing before him was secretly the billionaire owner of the conglomerate, about to acquire his entire company. I thought he was asserting dominance over a helpless employee, but he had just triggered the final sequence of his own professional destruction. The harsh sound of tearing fabric echoed across the concrete floor of the fulfillment center. Marcus Thorne, the regional director of Apex Logistics, kept his hand firmly clamped on Samantha's shoulder. When she had tried to step away from his aggressive, spittle-flecked tirade, his forceful grip had caught the delicate seam of her collar, ripping the inexpensive cotton blouse halfway down her arm. The massive warehouse immediately fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Dozens of frontline workers stopped sorting packages, staring in absolute shock at the confrontation unfolding in the center aisle. Samantha stood perfectly still, her dark hair falling forward to cover the exposed, torn fabric of her shoulder. At 38 years old, she had faced far worse challenges than a ruined shirt, but the sheer audacity of the man standing in front of her was genuinely astonishing. Marcus did not offer a single word of apology. Instead, he simply smoothed the lapels of his expensive tailored suit and sneered. His face flushed with an arrogant, unchecked authority. Maybe if you didn't buy your clothes from a discount bin, they wouldn't fall apart on the job, he mocked, his voice intentionally, projecting so every single worker could hear him. I don't care how new you are to this facility. When I am speaking to you, you do not walk away from me. You are nothing but a low-level data entry clerk, and you are entirely replaceable. Samantha looked down at the frayed edge of her collar, processing the physical boundary he had just crossed, then slowly raised her eyes to meet his piercing gaze. She had spent the last 3 weeks working undercover in this miserable distribution hub for a very specific reason. Her massive technology conglomerate was quietly in the final stages of acquiring Apex Logistics, and the financial reports provided by Marcus simply didn't match the grim operational reality on the floor. Now experiencing his behavior firsthand, she knew exactly why. She adjusted her posture, refusing to show any vulnerability or fear. Every second he spent gloating was another piece of evidence she would use to dismantle him. Instead of shrinking back or bursting into tears as Marcus clearly expected, Samantha merely pulled the torn edges of her blouse together with one steady hand. She did not raise her voice, nor did she hurl back any insults. You should be very careful about putting your hands on the people who work for you, Marcus, she said, her tone unnervingly calm and quiet. Marcus scoffed loudly, rolling his eyes at the surrounding workers before marching back toward his elevated glass office, overlooking the sorting floor. As the heavy door clicked shut behind him, a young warehouse associate named Elena nervously approached Samantha. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she took off her own oversized company fleece jacket and gently offered it. Here, put this on, Elena whispered, keeping her eyes darting toward the glass office. He's been looking for an excuse to fire someone all week to cut the payroll numbers. Please don't provoke him anymore. He enjoys ruining people. Samantha offered a warm, genuine smile, sliding her arms into the slightly worn fleece jacket. Thank you, Elena. I appreciate your kindness more than you know. Don't worry about me. I have everything under control. While the rest of the floor anxiously returned to their scanning machines and conveyor belts, Samantha walked back to her small, cramped desk in the corner. She didn't resume typing shipping labels. Instead, she opened a hidden partition on her encrypted flash drive and finalized the massive data extraction she had been running for 3 days. She now possessed undeniable digital proof that Marcus had been heavily doctoring the regional safety reports, stealing overtime pay from the floor workers, and falsifying inventory metrics to secure his own massive quarterly bonuses. The torn blouse was merely the physical manifestation of the absolute corruption running rampant in this facility. Samantha neatly saved the files, ejected the drive, and slipped it into the pocket of Elena's jacket. She had seen enough. The undercover portion of her investigation was officially over. It was time to initiate the corporate acquisition, and she was going to do it her way. Up in his glass-walled office, Marcus Thorne was beginning to feel a strange, creeping sense of unease. He sat behind his heavy mahogany desk, glaring down at Samantha's workstation through the blinds. She wasn't acting like a humiliated employee. She was typing with a methodical, unbothered rhythm that irritated him deeply. Deciding to monitor her screen through the administrative network, Marcus typed in his credentials. A bright red error message immediately flashed across his monitor. Someone at that specific terminal was bypassing the local server and accessing the restricted regional financial archives. Panic instantly replaced his arrogance. If those raw, unedited numbers ever reached the corporate acquisition team scheduled to arrive today, he wouldn't just lose his job, he could face federal fraud charges. Marcus slammed his laptop shut, his heart hammering against his ribs, and sprinted down the metal stairs to the warehouse floor. He stormed over to Samantha's desk, slapping a pre-printed piece of paper down on her keyboard. "You're done," he hissed, leaning in close so the other workers wouldn't hear the sudden desperation in his voice. "Effective immediately, your employment is terminated for insubordination and unauthorized computer access. Pack up your cheap little desk and get out of my building before I have security throw you out." Samantha slowly looked at the termination notice, reading it with an expression of mild amusement. She calmly picked up her notebook and her pen, making no move to take the paper. Elena, working at the adjacent station, gasped softly, her eyes wide with fear for her coworker. Marcus immediately pointed a threatening finger at Elena. "You keep your mouth shut and keep scanning, or you'll be out on the street right next to her," he barked. Samantha stepped protectively in front of Elena, her calm demeanor suddenly shifting into something dangerously sharp. "Leave her out of this, Marcus. Your problem is solely with me." Samantha stated, her voice carrying a weight that made Marcus instinctively take a half step backward. She grabbed her bag and turned away. "I'll be leaving this floor now, but I assure you I am not leaving this building." Marcus watched with a mixture of confusion and boiling rage as Samantha adjusted the oversized fleece jacket and began walking away from her desk. However, instead of turning left toward the employee locker rooms and the main warehouse exit, she turned right. She was heading directly toward the private, restricted corridor that led to the executive elevators. "Hey, where do you think you're going?" Marcus shouted, abandoning all pretense of professional volume. Several workers stopped their forklifts, watching the bizarre scene unfold. Samantha did not stop walking. Her pace was steady, her posture impeccably straight, despite the torn clothing hidden beneath the borrowed jacket. "I have a scheduled meeting on the top floor," Samantha replied over her shoulder, her voice perfectly even. Marcus let out a harsh, disbelieving laugh, jogging slightly to catch up and block her path. He stood firmly in front of the double doors leading to the executive wing. "A meeting? Are you completely delusional?" he mocked, gesturing wildly at her appearance. "You are a fired data entry clerk wearing a dirty warehouse fleece over a thrift store shirt. The national CEO of our buyer's company is arriving upstairs in exactly 10 minutes to finalize a multi-million-dollar acquisition. The only place you are going is the pavement outside." He pulled a heavy two-way radio from his belt, his eyes narrowing with malicious intent. "Security, this is Director Thorne. I need 2 guards at the executive corridor entrance immediately. I have a terminated hostile employee refusing to vacate the premises." Samantha stopped a few feet away from him, her expression completely unreadable. She checked her simple wristwatch, noting the time with precision. "You have exactly 1 opportunity to step aside, Marcus. If you force a public confrontation here, the consequences for your career will be entirely irreversible." Marcus sneered, crossing his arms over his chest as 2 large security guards quickly approached from the main lobby. "You really are crazy," he muttered, gesturing to the guards. "Grab her. Drag her out the back loading dock if you have to. I want her gone before the corporate suits get out of their cars." The 2 security guards hesitated for a fraction of a second, looking back and forth between the furious regional director and the remarkably calm woman standing before him. Samantha didn't flinch as they stepped closer. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek, solid black keycard. It bore no company logo, no name, and no identifying markers. Marcus laughed out loud. "What is that supposed to be, your gym membership? Your warehouse badge was deactivated the second I printed your termination paper." "Done." Ignoring his taunts, Samantha stepped past him and tapped the black card against the master scanner next to the heavy security doors. Instantly, the panel beeped a pleasant green. A mechanized voice echoed through the corridor. Priority Alpha override recognized. Executive access granted. The heavy electronic doors unlatched and slid open with a soft hiss. Marcus stood frozen, the arrogant smirk practically melting off his face. The security system had just been upgraded last week by the incoming parent company, and no one at this branch, not even Marcus, possessed an alpha-level override card. The two guards immediately stepped back, recognizing the digital authority of the keycard, even if they didn't understand who held it. "How did you get that?" Marcus demanded, his voice suddenly pitching higher in genuine panic. "That is restricted corporate property." "Stop her." But the guards refused to move their training, dictating that alpha-level clearance superseded regional management orders. Samantha stepped gracefully into the restricted elevator, turning to face Marcus as the stainless steel doors began to close. "I told you, Marcus. I have a meeting upstairs," she said softly, her eyes locking onto his panicked face. "I suggest you take the stairs. You wouldn't want to be late for the CEO's arrival." The elevator door shut tight, leaving Marcus standing in the hallway, clutching his radio, his mind spinning with terrifying possibilities. Who exactly had he just put his hands on? Desperation took over. He shoved past the confused security guards and sprinted toward the emergency stairwell, determined to intercept her before she could ruin his carefully constructed facade. The elevator ride to the top floor was smooth and silent, giving Samantha a brief moment to center herself. She slipped her hand into her pocket, tracing the edges of the encrypted flash drive. When the doors pinged open, she stepped into a vastly different world. The executive suite of Apex Logistics was an oasis of luxury featuring plush carpets, imported leather chairs, and expensive modern art. It was a stark, sickening contrast to the crumbling infrastructure and oppressive heat. The workers endured down on the warehouse floor. A team of high-level local managers stood nervously near the massive boardroom, adjusting their ties and holding pristine folders. They turned in unison as Samantha approached their faces, registering immediate shock at the sight of a woman in a bulky worn warehouse fleece trespassing in their sanctuary. Before any of them could speak, the heavy door to the emergency stairwell burst open. Marcus stumbled onto the floor, panting heavily, his face red and sweating profusely. He pointed a shaking finger at Samantha. "Don't listen to a word she says," he gasped, rushing forward to place himself between her and the boardroom. "She is a disgruntled, mentally unstable clerk who was just terminated for attempting to steal company data. She somehow cloned a security card to get up here." He turned to the other managers, his voice thick with desperate authority. "Call the police right now. The acquisition team is going to be here any second, and we cannot let them see this trash wandering around our executive floor." Samantha simply stood there watching him unravel. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice to defend herself against his frantic accusations. Her silence only seemed to unnerve him more. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a vicious whisper meant only for her. "I'm going to press charges. I'm going to make sure you never work in this industry again. You are nothing." Samantha tilted her head slightly, her gaze shifting to the grand double doors of the main elevator bank, situated directly behind Marcus. "You should probably turn around, Marcus," she advised quietly. A soft electronic chime echoed through the luxurious lobby as the polished doors of the main executive elevator slid open. A group of impeccably dressed individuals stepped out, moving with an air of absolute purpose and authority. At the front of the group was Julian Vance, the highly publicized national CEO of Aegis Holdings, the massive conglomerate purchasing Apex Logistics. Julian was a tall, imposing figure known for his ruthless efficiency and zero-tolerance policy for corporate incompetence. Marcus immediately spun around, wiping the sweat from his forehead and forcing a wide, painfully artificial smile onto his face. He quickly smoothed his tailored suit, attempting to hide his heavy breathing as he marched forward to intercept the incoming executives. "Mr. Vance, welcome to our regional hub," Marcus greeted loudly, extending a slightly trembling hand. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here to finalize the transition. I assure you our quarterly numbers are exceeding all expectations. Marcus purposefully stepped sideways, trying to physically block Julian's line of sight towards Samantha, who was still standing quietly near the boardroom entrance. If we could just step into the conference room, I can have my assistant bring us some imported coffee. Please excuse the slight disturbance in the hall. We are currently having security remove a very confused, disgruntled former warehouse employee. Nothing for you to worry about. Julian stopped walking. He completely ignored Marcus's extended hand, leaving it hanging awkwardly in the air. Julian's sharp eyes bypassed the local management team entirely and locked directly onto the woman standing behind them. The corporate entourage accompanying Julian also stopped their expressions, shifting from professional neutrality to profound, focused respect. Marcus felt a cold drop of sweat slide down his spine. He tried to speak again, trying to regain control of the narrative, but the words died in his throat. Julian Vance, the man Marcus had been desperately trying to impress for 6 months, stepped around him as if he were nothing more than a piece of furniture. The entire room held its collective breath as the powerful CEO walked directly toward the woman in the dirty warehouse jacket. Julian Vance stopped 3 feet in front of Samantha, his posture rigid and respectful. He did not look at the local managers. He did not look at Marcus. His eyes carefully assessed the oversized, faded fleece jacket she was wearing. Then his gaze caught a glimpse of the torn cotton fabric visible near her collarbone, a stark remnant of the physical altercation downstairs. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. When Julian finally spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet, yet it carried across the silent executive floor like a gunshot. "Who ripped her blouse?" Julian demanded, his eyes narrowing as he turned his head slowly to survey the terrified Apex management team. Marcus felt his knees go weak. His mind raced frantically, trying to comprehend the bizarre reality unfolding before him. Why did the CEO of the acquiring company care about a terminated clerk's cheap clothing, sir? Marcus stammered, stepping forward with his hands raised defensively. "Mr. Vance, I can explain." There was a minor incident on the warehouse floor. She was being insubordinate and clumsy. She caught her shirt on a shelving unit while resisting standard disciplinary procedures. It's a complete non-issue, I promise you. Julian's expression darkened into absolute fury. "A non-issue," he repeated softly. He turned fully toward Marcus, his gaze filled with complete disgust. "You think physically assaulting a woman and destroying her property is a non-issue? You think falsifying your safety metrics to cover up your abusive management style is a non-issue?" Marcus's jaw dropped. How could Julian possibly know about the safety metrics? The files hadn't been transferred yet. Unless... Marcus slowly turned his head to look at the quiet woman standing by the boardroom. Samantha reached into the pocket of the fleece jacket and placed the encrypted flash drive onto the nearest glass table. "The financial reports you submitted last week were completely fabricated." "Marcus," Samantha said, her voice echoing clearly in the silent room, "I know this because I just spent the last 3 weeks on your floor pulling the actual data myself." Marcus stared at her, absolute horror finally breaking through his arrogance. "Who are you?" Marcus breathed, his voice trembling as he backed away. Julian Vance stepped to the side, slightly bowing his head toward the woman in the borrowed jacket. "Marcus Thorne," Julian said clearly, ensuring every manager in the room heard him. "You are speaking to Samantha Hayes. She is the founder, majority shareholder, and chairwoman of Aegis Holdings. She owns this building, she owns this network, and as of the ink drying at midnight last night, she owns you." A collective gasp rippled through the local management team. Marcus looked as though the floor had suddenly vanished beneath his feet. The arrogant regional director, who had terrorized his staff for years, was suddenly reduced to a trembling, speechless mess. He had physically assaulted and fired a billionaire tech founder who held his entire livelihood in the palm of her hand. Samantha stepped forward, removing the fleece jacket to reveal the torn blouse underneath, an undeniable testament to his cruelty. "I don't care about the clothes, Marcus," Samantha stated, her voice sharp and commanding. "I care about the people on that warehouse floor whom you treat like disposable machinery. I care that you skimmed their overtime pay to pad your own bonuses. You judged me because you thought I was poor and you thought being poor meant I was entirely powerless. Marcus dropped to his knees, his pride completely shattered. "Miss Hayes, please," he begged, tears welling in his eyes. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was you. I can fix the numbers. I can make it right." "You're entirely correct. You didn't know," Samantha replied coldly, looking down at him without a single ounce of pity. "That is exactly why you are dangerous. Your character is defined by how you treat those who can do nothing for you, not how you grovel before those who can." She gestured toward the elevator. "You are terminated effective immediately without severance. My legal team will be filing federal fraud charges against you this afternoon based on the data I extracted. Get out of my building." Security personnel, the exact same guards Marcus had summoned earlier, arrived on the executive floor. This time, they did not hesitate. They grasped Marcus firmly by the arms and escorted the weeping, ruined manager into the elevator, stripping him of his badge and his dignity. The remaining local managers stood in terrified silence, awaiting their own fate. Samantha turned to them, her demeanor shifting from cold fury to practical business. "We have a lot of work to do to fix the culture in this branch," she announced. "Those of you who are willing to operate with integrity and respect for the frontline workers will remain. Those who cannot will follow Mr. Thorne out the door. Mr. Vance will begin the restructuring meetings immediately." While Julian ushered the nervous executives into the boardroom, Samantha took the elevator back down to the dusty warehouse floor. The workers were still tense, expecting Marcus to return and unleash his wrath. Instead, they watched in stunned silence as the quiet new data clerk walked confidently across the floor. Samantha stopped at Elena's workstation and gently draped the fleece jacket over the young woman's chair. Elena looked up, her eyes wide with confusion. "I believe this belongs to you." Samantha smiled warmly. "I also believe this facility needs a new director of warehouse operations, someone who actually cares about the safety and well-being of the staff. Are you interested in a massive promotion, Elena?" Elena covered her mouth, tears of shock and gratitude spilling over her cheeks as the rest of the warehouse erupted into sudden joyful applause. The toxic reign of fear was finally over. Over the next few months, Apex Logistics transformed completely. Samantha implemented strict safety protocols, raised the base wages, and ensured that management treated every single employee with the respect they deserved. She never forgot the sound of the tearing fabric, using it as a permanent reminder that true power isn't about intimidating people, it's about protecting them. The company flourished, built on a new foundation of trust, proving that the strongest businesses are always rooted in fundamental human decency. True power is never loud, and genuine wealth isn't always measured by the price tag on a suit. How you treat the people you believe are beneath you reveals everything about your actual character. Marcus assumed he could trample a vulnerable worker without consequences, only to discover that arrogance is the fastest path to ruin. Have you ever witnessed a toxic boss finally get exactly what they deserve? Tell us your most satisfying karma stories in the comments below. If this story reminded you that kindness and respect should always come first, please hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of justice and redemption. Remember, you never truly know who you are standing next to.